Thousands flee violence in Syria. Other refugees and migrants continue to risk their lives crossing the Mediterranean from Africa to Europe. The Italian coastguard has rescued around 6,000 people off Sicily's coast since Tuesday. Fearing an increase of arrivals of refugees, Austria has begun to build a barrier at the Brennero passage on the border with Italy. Let's get more on this story. I'm joined now by Joel Millman. He's the spokesman for the International Organisation for Migration. Joel, good of you to join us. 6,000 refugees in just 2 or 3 days. That sounds like an extraordinary number. Why this sudden spike?
It's not extraordinary. It's not sudden. It's a pickup of a seasonal migrant pattern that we've seen for a couple of years now. It's a lot. It seems like a lot after a lull during the cold months, but we've had days with twice, 3 times that in the past 2 years. What's of concern to us is that it's the beginning of high season, and we're finding no evidence that the surge out of North Africa for Italy is replacing the migrant traffic that left Turkey last year for Greece. We haven't seen those people try to make their way to North Africa. We think that they might, in which case the number of 6,000 will appear small in a very short time.
So these migrants, you say, are coming from Africa. Specifically, where in Africa?
Well, mainly at this point, sub-Saharan Africa, West Africa. Nigeria is the #1 country. Eritrea and Sudan and Somalia will be sending large numbers, we suspect, if patterns from previous years hold. But right now, we're seeing mostly from Nigeria west. A lot of times it's people that lived in Libya for some time who are just finding the security situation too unsettled, or they're in fact being kidnapped by some of these militias and smuggling gangs and being put on boats after their families pay ransom. So we're seeing all kinds of scenarios, but they're mostly attracted. The criminal gangs are attracted to these African guest workers, let's say, in Libya because they have very little support from their own governments or from the governments inside Libya either.
Joel, as you say, this is not the first year we've seen these kinds of routes being used. Is anything being done to stop them leaving from the point of origin?
It's difficult to say. You know, we're active in Libya only sporadically. Our people aren't able to move around and do a lot of monitoring. We understand that the Coast Guard of Libya has been more active this year than in years past. Tragically, more active often translates into finding more bodies. I think 7 off one coast this week, and there were days at the end of March where I think over 150 bodies were discovered by the Libyan Coast Guard. So there is a presence where there didn't used to be one, the Libyan authorities, but they're doing more cleaning up of crime scenes than actually avoiding or deterring crime. So it's one step at a time as far as we can tell.
Presumably, most of these people coming from Africa won't be classed as refugees. So what happens to them once they get to Italy?
Some will be. I mean, a lot of Nigerians talk about the violence of Boko Haram, and especially if they're practicing Christians in the north, religious persecution. So they would have obviously a refugee asylum case. Others may be citing tribal conflict or drought. Sometimes sexual sexual minorities or women who are in abusive marriages. All reasons where people from those countries would be considered refugees or asylum seekers. So we don't want to discount absolutely. It's true that many will be perceived as economic migrants, and then they'll have a different set of legal problems to stay in Europe. But a lot of times there are flexible ways, family unification or humanitarian visas and different statuses that can be applied. So we're always hopeful that anyone who's fleeing danger in a difficult life would have some haven in Europe.
Okay, Joel, many thanks for your time. Joel Millman there from the International Organisation for Migration.